and here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, Atlantis.
Water towers, fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting down to ST off. Bring in ST off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
Look at that!
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? We don't need any more of these.
Space Center in Florida, where a Falcon 9 rocket is ready to launch, and this time it is not a Starlink mission. This is the Galileo LM12 mission. This will be carrying the FM25 and 27 satellites into orbit. I'm Sawyer Rosenstein. I see all the 5x5s in chat, meaning that you can hear me, but as always, it's not just me. There's a fantastic team along for the ride with me, and that includes Mr. Ryan Caton. Ryan, how's it going?
Hello, Sawyer. Good evening. It's I was going to say it's a wonderful evening on the Space Coast, but it's a little bit cloudy. It's a little bit windy. Max might have some disagreements with me saying a little bit windy, but anyways, we're gonna give it a go. We're gonna see if we can get this thing off the ground tonight. Fingers crossed the weather will cooperate with us, but we'll just have to wait and see. But the forecast is favourable.
Yeah, the last official forecast was everything is continuing to proceed. I believe it was about 75 or 85% go, but right now, it really comes down to the real-time conditions, and that comes from our field team, including Julia Bergeron. Julia, how's it going?
Why, good evening, everybody. How's it going? Well, I am in the field, technically. I am off-site, currently actually located in my own backyard, and that would be because, well, as a local, when it's really cloudy and you know you're probably not going to get a photograph, home is always good too. As far as those winds go, nothing really gusty, but unfortunately it has been sustained, roughly 18 knots or 15 miles per hour. And looking at the trees, it's starting to slow down and there's little peaks of sun. So I know Max is feeling a little more hopeful out there. And although I have a cloudy view, I'm feeling more hopeful too.
Yes, and speaking of, we have Max Evans out at the Cape for us, bringing us some of these views and helping to track the rocket as it launches. So shout out to Max there as well. And Kevin Michael Reed is the one pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and making all of these photons arrive at your screen. So, this is a very unique mission in that this is an expendable booster. So there is no drone ship landing, there is no RTLS landing. This is strictly just a regular old rocket launch, which feels kind of weird. But before we get into the history of the booster, let's talk a little bit about what this L12 mission is. Ryan?
Wow, convenient that you bring on a European for a European mission. Essentially, the easiest way of describing Galileo is the European version of GPS. Everyone knows what GPS is, the Global Positioning System. Put my teeth back in. It is what allows your sat-nav to work in your car. It's what allows, let's say, US missiles to know where they are if they're traveling around the world. It has military purposes. It also has commercial and civilian purposes. And it is one of many different systems used throughout the world. China has their Beidou system, Russia has the GLONASS system, Japan and India also have their own systems. So essentially, it's a mini maybe mini's not the right word. It's a smaller version, a European version of GPS. And these two satellites, Galileo FM25 and FM27, are set to be the next two satellites to join the currently, where's the number gone? Here it is, 23 usable satellite strong network. So that'll increase the number of satellites in the constellation by a couple. It is the first planned Falcon 9 launch of two Galileo satellites. There may be another one later in the year, because initially these two satellites were planned to launch on a Soyuz from French Guiana. And unless you've been living under a rock for the last 2 years, there's a little bit of a political dispute currently ongoing between the West and Russia because of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. So they were moved over to Ariane 6 rockets with two SRBs. But unless you've been living under a rock for the last 2 years, you might know that Ariane 6 has been a little bit delayed. So the European Space Agency decided to move the Galileo satellites, these two and potentially the next two, over to a Falcon 9 Block 5, which is why tonight we are at the Kennedy Space Center, looking now with 54 minutes to go at a Falcon 9 Block 5 with two Galileo satellites inside of the payload fairing.
There you go. They've got the satellites inside the payload fairing and the legs missing from the first stage booster. As we've been talking about, this is an expendable booster. Julia, do you mind giving us a history of this booster as it gets ready to fly on its final flight?
Sure can, and it's so odd to see, and I think of them as naked booster on the pad without those landing legs. And it's hard, not really having a recovery team out there to recover that rocket. But let's get back on to what missions this particular booster B1060 has flown, and it's about to make its 20th flight. It started with GPS 3-3, so again, back to that GPS family of satellites, just a different country. Turksat 5A, Transporter 2, Intelsat G34, 33 and 34, Transporter 6, Intuitive Machines. We remember that landing. That was an interesting one. And 13 Starlink missions. So, wow, we've talked about this booster 13 times on just your ordinary Starlink mission, but tonight is not just your ordinary Starlink, as we are expending one and sending some more useful satellites for a customer to space.
Sawyer?
Yeah, that would
All
be
right.
me. Yeah, Julia stealing my line there. It left me speechless doing the Starlink line. That's what that was. Totally not muting. Anyway, reminder.
I
if you
left
have
Sawyer speechless. Ha ha ha.
A reminder: if you have any questions, you can tag us at NASA Spaceflight, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can. But I do want to thank some amazing support that has already come in before the stream even started. We had JP Ona becoming a Red Team member, John Depker gifting 10 Red Team memberships, and Matthew Scott McMillan gifting 50 Red Team memberships. Thank you so much for the extremely, extremely generous support, and give a check in chat. Who knows, you might have gotten one of those gifted memberships, and if you did, definitely give him a thank you. Dan Elgin also gifting a Red Team membership too, and Ricky Moore becoming a PAPRAT member. So, it appears to be very windy. I'm sure you can hear that on the microphones right now, but Julia, the wind constraints, what you feel isn't exactly what the 45th Weather Squadron is going based off of, right?
Correct. Winds not only factor in what we feel on the ground, and currently what Max is feeling about 13 miles away from me is more than what I'm apparently feeling. So I know if I were outside, yes, you would hear gusts of wind. I am currently at my kitchen window. Max, who is outside at KSC, he's saying it's very windy out right now, and there's a cloud layer that's passing him at the moment off of the Atlantic. And if you see our live cams of Cape Canaveral, Port Canaveral area, it's been rather marine advisory-like, shall we say, out there on the Atlantic. But they also do have to factor in upper level winds. Upper level winds are a factor because wind shear on your rocket is a very bad thing. And we don't want that as the rocket ascends. So that would be something they may be tracking. Sawyer, you might have a little bit better view of the board. I think everything else was green, but we were kind of keeping an eye on the winds at the moment.
The winds was the main thing. It appears that Max, though, is reporting that where he is with his cameras, there's a little bit of rain starting. But the last check was just observed 18-knot steady state winds. Other than that, the rest of the weather board is clear.
All right. Well, I mean, it's achievable, I think, if things continue to pass through. I mean, we're about 50 minutes away from launch, and weather changes fast here in Florida. So I guess we'll see if we fuel up this rocket.
Yes, we should hopefully be finding out about the go for fueling within the next, about 10 minutes or so. In the meantime, you could see there a look at the weather courtesy of the Kennedy Space Center, and everything appears to be okay for right now. All right, now we got to address the elephant in the room here. Everyone keeps asking, Ryan...
Why are they using Windows XP? Is that the elephant in the room?
No, it's are you experiencing trouble, as we saw in the corner there. Oh, a lot of people asking, why is this booster expendable?
Well, it's in this, well, technically every booster is expendable, or potential to be expendable, but this particular booster, B1060, is going to be going out with a bang, or really a crunch, into the Atlantic Ocean today. That's because it's got 2 satellites on board, which you may look at them and say, oh, it's only 1.6 metric tons, but Falcon 9 is pushing these to an approximately 24,000 kilometer circular orbit, and it's not only that, it's at a 56-degree inclination. So it's going very far away and at a relatively high orbital inclination, which means that Falcon has to put in a lot of performance in order to deliver these payloads to that orbit. And it's, let's put it this way, it's probably easier for SpaceX to expend a Falcon 9 in order to put these payloads into the customer's desired orbit than to get, like an entire Falcon Heavy and then recover an entire Falcon Heavy in order to put these payloads into that orbit. So it's operationally, I would assume it's easier for SpaceX to just throw away a Falcon 9. Yes, it is sad that on its 20th flight, B1060 is going to be thrown into the drink, but it's operationally, it's probably the smoothest way that they can do these things.
It's a shame to see it go, especially, again, one of the Dash 20s to see the end of its life. Because we already have a booster that has made it 20 flights and has been recovered, and now we have a booster with 20 flights that's being discarded. It's a little sad to see, but the cadence that SpaceX is going at this point, I mean, they'll have plenty of boosters, it seems like, at a Dash 20, so why not use an expendable, right?
Exactly. And, at the end of the day, I don't want to sound like I'm being mean, but at the end of the day, these are just tubes of aluminium which happen to carry big things into space. And they might be very cool tubes of aluminium, but they are still just tubes of aluminium. And as we can see on the left there, the Brevard emergency operations thingy has center, thanks Sawyer, has activated launch preparations, which is, it's not the definitive thing we look at for are they going to launch tonight, but it is one of the contributing factors that we can use to determine our prediction as to whether or not launch is go for today. And this is something which is, I'd say, is a little bit adds to the possibility that launch may be go if this weather clears out of the way. But this is Florida, so fingers crossed it does. This is certainly not what Florida looks like on the tourism pamphlets that they give out at travel agents, I will say that.
Yeah, Crispy quite often talks about the lies that the marketing gives off. I mean, you could see one of those cruise ships in the distance sailing off from
Come on
sunny
a cruise,
Florida.
they said. It'll be beautiful, they said.
Yeah, a sunny cruise minus the sun.
Look at that. That's worse weather than I've got outside my house right now, and I'm in the UK.
Wow, that's saying something. Question here from Musical Wolves saying, when was the last time a customer payload was an RTLS? And that was actually just earlier this month. That was the Bandwagon 1 mission 20 days ago to the day. So that's not super uncommon. The question that is uncommon here is from Matrix asking, when was the last fully expendable Falcon 9 launch?
Now, if I stall enough, maybe a certain Spaniard in the back channel can give me the answer to that question, but I can tell you that the last fully expended Falcon 9 that launched from Launch Complex 39A was Intelsat 35E, all the way back on July 6th of 2017. So it has been nearly 7 years since the last time that a fully expendable Falcon 9 launched from this very specific pad. Unless we want to get into the pedantics and count the Dragon in-flight abort as a fully expended Falcon 9, which it was, but again, it was meant to abort. So, does it count? Does it?
Yeah, no, I don't think it does. When we're talking about expendable, we're talking about, I feel like, delivering a payload to orbit in that sense. It didn't deliver a payload to orbit. I mean, it did exactly what it was supposed to do in testing the escape system for the Dragon capsule, but I don't know. I personally don't count that. And by the way, just so you know, the last expendable booster in general was Eutelsat 10B in November of 2022 from Slick 40.
Thanks, Sawyer. But you know, something that a certain Spaniard has just brought up in the back channel is that even today's mission is not fully expendable, and that is because our good friend Bob, the offshore supply ship, is out stationed in the Atlantic, ready to scoop up both fairing halves. So even though the booster is being thrown away, the fairings are still planning to come back and be reused on yet another Falcon mission. So it's, I don't know, you could call it fully expendable, but the fairings are coming back, so it's not really fully expendable. So, you know, there's so many lines of pedantickery, if that's a word, that we can go down here, but like...
And Bob is way far downrange for this one, 990 kilometers to the northeast, which, by the way, it's a northeast flight tonight, which is something we don't often see due to Starlinks tending to go southeasterly. So what a treat if we could see it better. But yeah, northeast, 990 kilometers to get those fairings. So those fairings are precious cargo.
Oh yeah, and that goes along with John Depker's question of saying, since this very awesome booster is being sacrificed, where will it re-enter / break up / crash? So obviously we've got the fairing recovery area, we've got Bob, as you mentioned, downrange, but Julie, do we know where we're expecting impact here?
You know, I honestly don't know that answer. Well, northeast. Northeast offshore. But no, I haven't seen a hazard map that actually showed that.
Oh, look at this! There it is. It appears to be just off the coast of North Carolina for the booster.
Oh, okay, which would make sense because that's about when normally it would be kind of starting to lose altitude and head toward that drone ship if we were recovering it. So basically just going to do that crash landing and become another reef.
There you go. But yeah, the fairings farther downrange. Alex pointing out in the back channel that this is the same fairing recovery ship that just did Starlink 6-53, which was southeast, and is now made its way all the way up north. So getting some good mileage on those boats. Let's see here. We've got some more support from Ryan Hamster saying, "No, I just realized it'll be expended. This is the booster me and my wife got to see back in March of 2021. Sad. I'm sorry. I mean, it's had a lot of eyes on this booster with 20 flights. It's done pretty good." And then Matt PD saying, "Does SpaceX continue to track expendable boosters until impact for the gathering of datas?" I don't know if we know the official answer, Ryan, but I would think so, right?
SpaceX, I don't believe, has ever said anything official. However, I would. I have the belief that SpaceX will intake any and all data that they can get. You know, it's the company ethos, essentially, as we've seen very publicly down in Starbase with the Starship launches. Gather as much data as possible, no matter the cost. So I would imagine that they will do as much as they can to gather as much data, because even though this is, you know, I say just Falcon and not the future, not Starship, the only reason SpaceX has managed to get Starship to where it is today is because of their experience and period of learning that they've gathered with flying Falcon 9. So Falcon is if it wasn't for Falcon, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Right. And I'm thinking, you know, you've got those onboard technical cameras, which are going to give SpaceX at least a view of the booster going down, and potentially that could also help them ensure that this booster does what they expect it to do, right? Which is break up upon landing, because we wouldn't want large floaty bits out in the ocean to create marine hazards. You know, which also led me to, maybe this is an Alex question, but maybe this is a Sawyer question. You know, as it's coming down as an expendable booster, do we at all ramp up some of the engines to ensure that it has that final demise, or does gravity just do the thing? Because that would be one last check of those engines before, you know, a little bit more data, maybe? Hard to say.
I feel like that would be a bit counterintuitive almost, because at that point you're trying, you know, when you fire the engines that way, it's slowing it down, unless you're talking about while it's still before apogee firing in that direction.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It is more like a giant lawn dart, and we don't want to slow it down at all.
Exactly. Here's an interesting question. While we were talking about the trajectory and things, Jonathan Tucker is asking here, will we see anything in the UK, although we have rain in the south? And I think that's a great question for anyone along the East Coast here. Julia, do you think they might be able to get a view of it? And might there be a special phenomena that they might be able to see?
Well, I imagine the weather is probably a little bit less cloudy as you go downrange, which in this case is northeast. So yes, there is a chance, and there is a chance of that phenomenon of jellyfish. Jellyfish is a special phenomenon that happens not too long after sunset, as the plume and bursts actually kind of catch that atmospheric light higher up. You kind of get this really neat effect, and I'm looking forward actually to seeing maybe some folks sharing online what their view was, because it tends to do a little bit better farther downrange, to be honest, than our second stage separation here. Just because it's going to be about half hour after sunset for us, so it'll be higher in the sky as it goes farther northeast.
So, hopefully, we will see.
Hopefully, yeah. So share those pictures, guys.
Yep. And at this point, they should be underway for the poll of whether to go or not for fueling. So we will keep an ear out to see if they give that official go for propellant load or not. So if they do go ahead with the propellant load, Ryan, can you kind of break down the process here?
So if they are going to say we are go for propellant load, we should be just, as you can see there, over a minute away from the beginnings of not only the RP1 but also the liquid oxygen loading in the first stage. And especially when that liquid oxygen starts to go in, we'll start to see a little bit of frost, a little bit of condensation starting to wisp around the bottom end of the liquid oxygen tank on Falcon 9, which is a visual indicator that things are going as planned. And then about 15 minutes after that, we will enter the LOX chill down as we prepare to get the liquid oxygen loading into the second stage. After that, we'll be going into engine chill. The strong back will begin to retract. The liquid oxygen load will wrap up on both the first and second stages. Falcon 9, as it always does, enters into startup, takes control of its own systems. The propellant tanks pressure rise. The launch director will verify go for launch. The engines will ignite, and Falcon 9 will lift off, carrying 2 Galileo satellites to a medium Earth orbit.
That's what we're hoping for. Again, waiting for the official word that fueling has begun. In the meantime, Jayla Rose with a $50 super chat. Thank you so much for all of the generosity from everyone already today. Asking, how many times have these fairings been used, and what is the proposed reusability of fairings? Now, unfortunately, SpaceX has kind of stopped giving out exact numbers of how many times they've flown. But Julia, you've seen them come into port quite often. They come back quite toasty.
They do come back quite toasty, and it is unfortunate that SpaceX sometimes we'll see kind of after launch there'll be a, hey, this has flown X amount of times, this is a record for us. Looking at the fairings that are on there currently, wow, at one point it probably had a mission emblem on there, and that was covered up, and yeah, oof. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how many times they've flown, and I'd say these were rather toasty though. So could it be 12? Could it be 15? I think we've had some. I mean, I know we've had some fairings go up in the teens, but I honestly don't quite know how to rate the life of fairings, so, to be honest, because even on a booster, soot is relative. A 20 flight booster and an 8 flight booster can kind of have that same visual amount of soot on it, and because it depends on its trajectory and how hard of a reentry it had. So it's nice when SpaceX does share, but unfortunately, no, we don't know the true answer for this mission. But they definitely look well used.
That is for sure. And thank you again so much for the absolute generous support there. In the past, SpaceX has said that they've flown at least 15 times for certain fairings. Obviously, we know they've flown boosters more than 15 times. All right, Mock Space asking the question that we all want to know. Stubby nozzle, yay or nay? Ryan?
I would hope that because this is, as we've said many times already, a very high performance mission for Falcon 9, that we will not be seeing such a cursed thing today. And I don't think we don't see that much of it anyways, because at the customer's request, which is at ESA's request, we're not going to get any views past fairing separation, because again, they're throwing this booster into the drink. There's no drone ship landing or RTLS landing for us to observe, so we're just going to have to, we're going to have to go back to the days before Falcon 9 started being reused and just see a booster being thrown into the ocean, which, it sounds really weird to say for a Falcon 9 because we're so used to seeing it be reused, but it's day-to-day operations for, like, ULA and the such. But back to the question, hopefully no stubby nozzle for this high-performance mission.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with no stubby nozzle anyway, but yeah, the fact that they're already expending the booster, they want every single drop of thrust they can get out of this vehicle. At this point, I've noticed that the camera's, shaking a little bit here with the wind. And Julia, Demian has a question here, and I'm going to modify it a little bit. They said, has any rocket launch in history failed due to weather? But I'll say, has there any rocket launch in history that almost failed or was affected by weather?
Ooh.
Maybe a certain Apollo mission?
I was going to say, Apollo. Going through certain clouds is absolutely not happy for boosters, rockets in general, which is part of our weather constraints. And they tend to be the thicker clouds that could turn into, shall we say, thunderstorm clouds. But those same clouds can also turn into a rocket can create lightning as it goes through there. So, yeah. Do I know of any specifically that were absolutely unexpected disassembly? No. Have weather constraints though. The 45th will not let you. They'll definitely try and thread the needle to get you gone in between weather, but the 45th will not let a launch provider launch during bad weather and knowingly put a rocket or the public safety in harm's way.
Exactly. And if you look very closely there on the right side of your screen, you can see frost forming. So it appears that fueling is underway on Falcon 9, and it seems like they are going to continue to go for it for a launch just about 30 minutes from now. You can see on the left side of your screen the KSC weather boards that they cycle through. And it appears like we had some storms that passed by. Obviously, Max trying to hide from the rain there, but everything else seems okay. With our super enhanced zoom there, thanks to Kevin Michael Reed. So, in terms of the timeline then, they will be loading the Stage 1 RP-1, Rocket Propellant 1, the refined kerosene, as well as the liquid oxygen, as I like to call it, the loxygen, into the first stage, and the RP-1 load will also start on the second stage, which, unlike the first stage booster, loads one propellant at a time. So those should be underway, and obviously we'll keep an eye out for our favorite T-minus 20-minute vent, the exciting part. Let's get back to some more of your questions here. Here's a question from 9/8 Central, and Ryan, as the European, I'll pose this one to you. Do we know if ESA saves money by launching with Falcon 9 rather than Ariane 6? Or better yet, why Falcon 9 over Ariane 6 right now?
I'll start with the second question because it's a little bit easier to answer because, as you may notice, Ariane 6 has not launched once. Falcon 9 has launched, I think, over 40 times this year alone. So Falcon 9 launches are much more accessible and I'd say probably preferable for the European Space Agency, who had the Galileo satellites in production ready to go, and they didn't have a vehicle to put them on once Soyuz fell through. So that's why they've gone with Falcon 9, I'd say. Will they save money? I have suspicions about how that could be classified in terms of ESA funding helping to develop the Ariane 6. Do we count development costs as well as launch costs into how much it costs ESA to put Galileo satellites on Ariane 6? I'm not sure. But I would say the public numbers that have been banging around for a few years now is, I think, like $60 million plus for Falcon 9, for a Falcon 9 launch. I would imagine that costs more if you want to expend the booster for a high performance mission like this when you can't bring it back. So we don't have, you know, I don't have ESA's annual budget in front of me to see how much money they've spent on Ariane 6 and how much Ariane Group and Ariane Space have spent on Ariane 6. And if, you know, there's especially when Ariane 6 is such an it's essentially a program of ESA. They're obviously, it's like NASA and SLS. NASA has obviously put a lot of money into funding SLS to develop SLS, but does that then count into the launch costs? So that's the same like rhetorical question I have with ESA and Ariane 6. So that's why it's hard to give a definitive answer on that, because we simply don't really know.
Yeah, plus Ariane 6 still in development part, but yeah. Here's a great question from Garrett. Where's FM26? We have 25 and 27 launching here. What happened to FM26?
FM26 is currently slated to fly on the next and potentially second and last Falcon 9 mission with Galileo satellites on, and for some reason, I'm not sure, ESA have decided to launch FM25 and 27 on the first Falcon 9 launch for Galileo, and FM26 and 28 on the second Falcon 9 launch for Galileo. And fun fact, if I may, about the satellites, they've all got a name from the respective European countries which the Galileo constellation serves, and for this mission, we have FM25, which is a name from the UK, Patrick, and we have FM27, which is a Swiss name, Julina. I was about to say Juliana, but it doesn't have an A in there. It's Julina. So that's the two nicknames for today's satellites, which was selected. And if you wanna go do a search online in your preferred search engine, you can go back and see all the different names, which I won't list out because there's 24 of them, or 28 of them technically.
Running through the alphabet at this point.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it almost feels like we're naming hurricanes, but in this case, we're naming satellites, and I think that's kind of cool.
I think it's really cool. Imagine if SpaceX did that with all the Starlink satellites.
That I mean, they run out. They go through the dictionary twice by now, or something like that. And interestingly, underneath the US flag, I spy another flag, which I believe, even though it's hard to tell with the dark clouds, I think that's the Starliner patch on a flag, because of course we have Starliner launching within the next few days, pending weather and capsule readiness and astronaut readiness, and you know the whole deal with crew flights, especially for a crew flight test. But there you go. Yeah, we've got a Starliner coming up in just over a week.
Right, that is the CFT patch, the crew flight test. That is currently scheduled for the night of May 6th from Slick 41 aboard an Atlas V N22. This will be the first time that crew will launch from the Space Force side since the 1960s, and the first crew launch from Slick 41, and the first time for the commercial crew program from NASA that it isn't a SpaceX capsule launching the people into space as well. I want to thank some support that we've been getting here. Coco Cats, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. Richard Cochran, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And Musical Wolves, this may be an Alex back channel question here, but how many missions have switched from a Soyuz to a Falcon 9? Seems like we've had a few of them recently.
That I wonder if someone's made like a page. We need a page on Next Spaceflight specifically dedicated to missions that have moved off Soyuz because of the conflict in Ukraine. I'm off the top of my head, I would say Euclid, these 2 Galileo satellites, and the next 2 Galileo satellites. But that's all I have at the top of my head right now. Alex saying in the back channel that it's more than he can remember. I'm trying to think if there's any more as well. Jay Keegan, our own Jay Keegan, saying ExoMars potentially, but ExoMars has been, ExoMars has been delayed by many years. I can't even remember when it was first initially meant to launch, because it's just a bit. ExoMars is a little bit of a. I don't want to say it's a mess right now, because that wouldn't be very fair on the mission teams and what have you. But it's not in a organised situation, shall I put it that way?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, and you've had
Adrian also bringing up Hera, which was moved. He thinks so. There is a large number of missions which have moved from shall I say Ariane 6 to Falcon 9 because Ariane 6 isn't ready, and also Soyuz to Falcon 9, maybe because in a roundabout way Ariane isn't ready. Like, it was moved from Soyuz because they can't use Soyuz anymore because of the geopolitical situation. They moved it to Ariane 6, then Ariane 6 wasn't ready, so it had to go to Falcon 9. So in a roundabout way, everything's ending up going on to Falcon 9 because it's the only vehicle that is ready in time to launch those missions.
And also a big one being pointed out by Jay, OneWeb too. We had those recently. That was moved over. And not all of these moved from Soyuz. We had the ones that moved from Ariane. There's, as pointed out, one in Vandenberg that'll be launching next month, because of weather. On a Vega originally, now launching out on the West Coast. So.
That's another good point, because Vega had its issues, so then that was not retired, but taken off the flight roster for a while so they could figure out what was going on with Vega C as well. So, yeah, this is as a European, it doesn't fill me with, a lot of good feelings talking about this, but, we get through these things. Fingers crossed Vega will be back up and running soon, and Ariane will be flying soon, and we'll get our own little European private companies launching their small sat launchers soon.
Oh yeah, there's exciting. Oh, go ahead, Julia.
Oh, I was just going to say, and just it's interesting to think of, like, at least in this case, SpaceX has this fleet of boosters that these payloads have the option to go to, and that Falcon 9 happens to have the capabilities that they need. And with some of this fleet of boosters starting to age, when it does become something that requires an expendable mission, it's easier for SpaceX to say, yes, we have a booster that we can provide for that mission. And it is unfortunate, though, to think of, that geopolitical situation and the costs of having for those providers having to move those payloads overseas to bring them to launch. So there's kind of lots to think of there, but it is fortunate that there is this fleet of boosters that has been maintained and able to fly multiple times to support these customer missions that maybe weren't expected.
Yeah, no kidding there. And it's great to see a Dash 20. It's sad to see it go. But one thing we do love to see, should be coming up any second now, is the T-minus 20-minute, 20-second vent, aka the best vent. And that is an indication in our fueling process. Let's see if we can see that pop on out of the transporter erector there. You'll see a big plume, hopefully, very soon. Ryan, why do we have a T-minus 20-minute vent?
Essentially, SpaceX needs to make sure that everything's conditioned and ready, and there isn't any abnormalities within the ground service equipment in order to allow the liquid oxygen load to begin. Because if you have say warm or room temperature pipes, and then you suddenly flow liquid oxygen through them, liquid oxygen's very cold, and the pipes don't really appreciate that. So we're just getting the pipes into the mood in order to get ready to carry that super cold liquid oxygen. Because if they're not in the mood, like we can see now, then they get a little unhappy. So that's why we see this vent right now, and just above that vent you can see what appears to be a grey stripe around the second stage, and that's because the second stage has a grey stripe around it, because it is equipped with the what is dubbed the mission extension kit, I believe, which keeps the RP1, the rocket propellant 1, the rocket grade kerosene, the however many other names it has, that keeps it at a more preferred temperature to improve the efficiency of the second stage, improves its performance. It allows it to do its job even better than it could before.
So you're saying the gray stripe is kind of like a refrigerator or freezer?
A little bit.
Okay.
Oh, that's where I left my sandwich. Okay. But this really does feel like a Falcon heavy center core without the side cores here, because you've got the stripe that we've seen on some of the mission extensions. It's expendable. It's weird. It's a Falcon 9 Falcon heavy single stick. And yeah, it also helps to insulate while it's in there as well. Because keep in mind, this is going through the different day-night cycles up there. So you're talking extreme temperature differences. Hopefully that made sense there.
It's all about temperature.
Oh, yeah. And if we get a 5x5 that you hear me again, then we will continue the commentary portion here. We'll see if we get the 5x5s. There we go. It appears we have audio back again. there we go. I promise that wasn't Jake pulling a plug this time. So what it was, we'll find out, but I'm sure it might not be my... Maybe the corned beef sandwich was left inside the server instead of the rocket. So I
You
guess...
getting crummy over there?
Oh, that was good.
Oh.
I think people now wish the mute was back on again.
Yeah. So, just to maybe, in case y'all lost while I was talking, to answer that question, why go bigger when you can just add on an extension? So, Falcon Heavies are more expensive. We do, yes, expend that center core, and we would recover the side boosters, but that's a big rocket for something that can be accomplished with just a single stick and an extension.
There you go. And if that happens again, just imagine me creating the worst puns you could think of, and actually, I would actually be interested in seeing some of those in chat. Just saying. Trixie with the question here. Ryan, do we know if they'll expend any more Falcon 9 flight boosters?
Probably. Whether intentional or not intentional, they probably will. It's SpaceX doesn't really publish a lot of these things years in advance, so we don't really know a manifest of what will be expended, what won't be expended. But I wouldn't be surprised if this happens again. You know, I very much doubt this is going to be the last time a Falcon 9 booster is expended. Maybe in the future things will start to be expended more because it's an end-of-life thing, like when Falcon 9 boosters are rated up to 40, 50, maybe beyond flights. You know, once they're at the end of their life and they're not needed anymore, it's easier for SpaceX to just toss them into the Atlantic or Pacific Oceans than have to sit there and spend a day or two scrapping them. So that could be the more predominant reason as we go into the future.
And it appears as if the LOX chill down vent there that we were talking about earlier, the T-minus 20-minute vent, has stopped, which typically indicates that stage 2 LOX load is underway. So they'll begin loading up the second stage with the liquid oxygen now that its RP1 tanks are full. Let's see. For those that are kind of just joining us here, Brian asking, what do these satellites do? So, Ryan, do you mind giving us a quick little mission overview as we get to T-minus 15 minutes?
Of course, for everyone just joining us, if you weren't with us at the start, why were you not with us at the start? You should be with us all the way through. Anyways, welcome to the stream. I'll give you another little quick overview of what Galileo is. So first of all, something I didn't mention at the start, which I think I should probably bring up, is what the Galileo satellite navigation constellation is named after, which is of course Galileo Galilei, who is a very famous Italian astronomer who did a lot of work in the early days, shall I say, of astronomy, which is what this satellite navigation constellation is named after. It is one of many different sat-nav constellations we have throughout the world. It's essentially Europe's version of GPS. I'm sure you probably already know what GPS is. It's how your sat-nav in your car works. It's how you can look on your phone and see where you are. GPS is a American system, but it is global, and the US allowed anyone for civilian use to use it anywhere all over the world. However, Europe wants their own version, just in case the US ever decides to turn GPS off. Europe has their own version of it. China has their own version called Beidou. Russia has their own version called GLONASS. Japan and India have their own versions. So this isn't a trivial thing. 2 satellites are inside the payload fairing today. One called Patrick, one called Julina, named from the UK and Switzerland respectively, FM25 and FM27 respectively. These satellites were initially going to launch on a Soyuz, then the war in Ukraine happened, so they were moved to Ariane 6, then Ariane 6 was delayed, so they were moved to Falcon 9. This is the first of 2 currently slated Falcon 9 Galileo missions, both currently slated to have 2 satellites on top. So that's kind of as concise as you can get it, explaining what Galileo is and then what these satellites are. So it's European GPS.
Exactly, and like you mentioned, there's a little bit of crossover there with some of these, but That's a large. It's surprisingly a large network. People don't realize the Galileo
There's
satellites.
23 satellites, I believe, which are currently usable, and there's 30 in total which are up there. So and these are, unlike GPS, this is a medium Earth orbit.
Yeah, I think that's worth clarifying as well, that the GPS satellites that we launch from the US are typically into lower Earth orbit. That's also why we've seen missions like GPS SV04, 05, so on, that launched on Falcon 9 be reusable, because those first stage boosters don't have to perform as much because of the typical orbit that they're going into. And this one's the very high, distant, and northeasterly trajectory for this launch. John, thank you for getting an item from the shop, saying this will look perfect next to my hopper print. Thanks NSF for such an amazing collection. Oh, awesome shot there of the Starship Sunrise. Enjoy. Daniel Hogman gifting 5 Red Team memberships, and Steve Alling saying happy launch day. And Julia, this is for you. Is the Falcon Heavy still set for the last week in June, planning a trip down? And I guess the most important thing is planning a trip down around a rocket launch.
That's so brave, planning trips around rocket launches, which makes me feel so thankful I live where I live. I'm looking through next space flight right now. As far as I know, it is still planned for then. That's actually your best way to kind of, at least as we know information, keep up on the current launch schedule, and it is showing no earlier than June 25th. So no earlier than June 25th, hopefully. For your sake, planning a vacation around a rocket launch, June 25th is the day. So just stay tuned to the next spaceflight website and app, and of course you can get some viewing location ideas from our YouTube channel and our How to Watch a Rocket Launch video.
Featuring Max and Julia in there as well, yep.
Oh, there's a little bit of Sawyer in there too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the nice thing, I guess, about current day Space Coast is that even if you plan to come for a Falcon Heavy launch and it doesn't go, as long as you're there for longer than a day or two, there's a good chance you'll still see some launch of some kind, likely a Starlink or a Falcon 9, which, trust me, there's no disappointment in seeing a Falcon 9 launch.
When
Or
I
you
went
can
down
take
to
the
see
selfie. I'm so sorry, Ryan. I was going to say, or if there isn't a launch, there's more than likely a booster in port to take a selfie with. But yes, Ryan, tell us about when you came to visit.
Yeah, when I came down to see Psyche, first of all, it was delayed by a year, which wasn't great. But then it was delayed by a week. So not only did I have to shift my flights by a year, I then had to shift them again by a week. But on the same day, as I was very fortunate enough to see the Falcon Heavy, but on the same day in the evening, there was a bonus Starlink launch. And, if you've never seen a launch in person and you're a huge fan of NSF and you see all our Starlink streams, it might start to feel a little bit repetitive. But trust me, and I'm not just saying this, a Starlink launch as your first, second, even third launch, it is spectacular. It does not matter what is inside of that payload fairing. It is an incredible experience, and you should do pretty much anything you can in order to witness it, because it is just incredible. It's not, if you're watching it on YouTube, it's just another Starlink. Blah, 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 blah. If you're watching it in person, it's a whole different game. You just need to see it. You just need to see it. There's no other way I can convince you to do it. You've just got to see it.
And to add to that, I cannot tell you how many times Max has been out there and said, that was the coolest thing I've seen to date. And it was a Starlink launch. And I'm like, what did you see that I didn't see? I'm only 12 miles different from you. But a Falcon 9 launch is a Falcon 9 launch regardless of what's in that payload, like you said. And they never fail to surprise.
Yeah, I think between the three of us, we have hundreds of launches under our belts, and even still, it just...
I think I make up about 0.0005% of that, Sawyer. You're being very generous.
Well, with Julia and Max and a couple from Kevin, Michael Reed, I think, yeah, it doesn't get old, right, Julia?
Right. And Max told me I should really go back and figure this out because it's just harder the longer you go. You know, I've lived here since April of 2016. March of 2016. I honestly don't know the number of rocket launches I've seen. I can't even tell you how many actual booster returns I've seen, just that I've done 165 selfies, which is not reflective of how many I've actually seen come back to port. So I can tell you between Max, me, Sawyer, and the crew that's been here even since shuttle, hundreds. And every launch counts from every member, even if it's only a handful.
Exactly. And our countdown for this launch, the next one up, is continuing as we go below the T-minus 7 minute mark, which means at this point, engine chill is underway on the 9 Merlin 1D engines on that first stage. Why do we need to chill them down, Ryan?
Well, if you heard my little spiel about the T-minus 20 minute vent, they don't like it if you do a drastic temperature difference. They like to be gradually smoothed into the cooler temperatures and the hotter temperature. They like a gradual transition, right? So all of these different chills and other temperature preparations, this is all just to make sure everything temperature-wise is sitting nice, isn't going to be too shocked by a sudden change in temperature. It's basically just to keep the materials healthy and happy, because if you suddenly shock a material with a drastic temperature change, like you see inside of a rocket, it doesn't get too happy, and then it can break in a various number of ways. So it's just got to chill out. That's all it's trying to do.
Yeah, just chill. Which, Julia, I know we're going to probably have to let you not chill and get to work as we get to the T-minus 5 minute mark, so you can go out, enjoy the launch, and we will talk to you after liftoff.
Sounds great. See you after liftoff.
All right, now approaching the T-minus 5.5 minute mark here. At this point, we have confirmation that stage 1 RP1 load is complete. So the first stage is fully fueled with the refined form of kerosene. LOX load continues underway. And Ryan, I think we actually have some information out in the back channel about those fairings. I know someone asked earlier how many times these fairings have been flown.
4 times is what we're being told by SpaceX, which in terms of Falcon 9 fairing numbers, they're a little bit rookie numbers, but they're 4 times nonetheless. You know, any number is a great number. We like those higher numbers a little bit more, dare I say. But yeah, these fairings have definitely been used before. You could tell that even by just looking at them, but it's nice to have some factual confirmation as well.
There you go, rookie numbers. Just calling out the fairing halves. But again, as mentioned, there is recovery assets downrange. In fact, for this one, it is positioned 990 kilometers to the northeast of the launch site. Typically, for Starlink, we're used to seeing those about 600 kilometers to the southeast. So, quite a difference from what we're used to seeing. And a reminder again that this launch will actually be going northeasterly. So anyone who's along the east coast of the United States and Canada, if you have clear skies, it can't hurt to go out and take a look. You might even get to see a little bit of a jellyfish effect, given how
we
close
could
we are.
be in big jelly hour, because the sunset probably only about half an hour ago in Cape Canaveral, let alone the rest of the eastern seaboard of the US. So if you are anywhere and it's not cloudy, or if you have a little gap, just have a look up, because we could be in big jellyfish hour. So keep your eyes out.
Exactly, and you can see right now the clamps retracting away from underneath those 4-time flown fairing halves as they slowly retract the transporter erector, the TE there. That is only going to go back 1.8 degrees away from the rocket, but will fully retract and throw back once we hit T0. You can actually see some of the lines there as it retracts that connect into the payload fairing, providing communications and data, as well as there is actually conditioning inside of the payload fairings for those satellites.
They get AC and I don't. This is disgraceful.
I mean, I guess if you paid SpaceX enough, they'd give you air conditioning.
I'm not sure if I want to sit inside a payload fairing, though. You know, you win some, you lose some.
All right, we are now coming up on 2.5 minutes before launch, we have confirmation that Stage 1 LOX load is complete. So with that, this first stage booster, for likely the final time, has been fully fueled. A reminder, unlike typical
Don't
missions...
jinx it, Sawyer. Don't jinx it.
I'm trying to... That's why I said likely. Likely
okay,
the last
okay.
time that it's loaded in. As a reminder, this booster, B1060, is expendable. So, we will not see a return to launch site landing or a drone ship landing on this particular mission.
We're never going to see it again. Like this, ladies and gents, this is literally the last time we are going to see this booster. In 2 minutes' time, it's gone. It's gone. You'll never see it again.
We have confirmation right now that the weather is go, and all systems are remaining healthy. So that's what we want to hear as we get into the final part of the count. And Stage 2 LOX load is complete, which is also indicative by the vent that you see on your screen right there. One final purge of that line, right, Ryan?
One final chilled out. You know, Falcon 9 just wants to chill out. GSE just wants to chill out. Just let it chill out. Just let it be chill. Let it be chill.
Also purging the lines of any remnant gaseous or liquid oxygen that might still be in there, because that could potentially be an explosion.
Non-nominal combustion.
Yeah, especially as you have the 9 engines flying past it. So that's why we see that. Now,
I'm seeing
up,
a lot of farewell B1060s in chat, by the way, so I don't know. Nightbot might time you out, but just spam farewell B1060 in chat. Go on, chat. Go on, chat.
All the 07 salutes. As we go under T-minus 1 minute, at this point, Falcon 9 entering startup, meaning the onboard computers will take control of the final part of the countdown here. Tanks are also pressurized to flight pressures at that time as well. We have confirmation that the onboard computers have taken over in what is known as Falcon 9 entering startup. The next thing that we will expect is a go for launch, hopefully, from the launch director as we approach T-minus 30 seconds. And we have the go for launch confirmed. We're now 20 seconds approximately away. We will let you listen to the launch audio once it happens. A reminder, it takes some time for the sound to get to our microphones, so I promise after liftoff we will be quiet and let you enjoy the crackle as we go under 10 seconds. Keep an eye out at the base of the rocket. There are the Rainbirds. We should be getting engine ignition hopefully shortly. There it is. And liftoff of Falcon 9 carrying Galileo, the L12 mission, as well. Farewell, B1060. Beautiful crackle as it goes into the clouds. At this point, the vehicle should be just about to pass max Q. There it is, maximum aerodynamic pressure, pushing down on the vehicle as it makes its climb into a medium Earth orbit. And boy, that was a bright fireball tonight looking one.
That sound as well was beautiful. These satellites initially, I'm going to say the famous line, they were supposed to get a rumble in the Amazon jungle, but instead they got a rumble on the Space Coast, which is, you know, just as good a rumble, dare I say. But they are now heading up to their medium Earth orbits. Looking beautiful from, I believe this is AutoTrack on one of our bots at the press site.
It also sounds like car alarms there as well at the press site from the noise shaking that one.
They're just saluting B1060.
There you go. Coming up on about 2 minutes into flight now, so in about 45 seconds, we will have the 3 events in rapid succession that we're used to seeing here, with MECO, main engine cutoff, followed by the separation of those first and second stages, and then the SES-1, which is the start of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. Following that will be payload fairing deployment, and then beyond that, all we will have is our ground tracking cameras.
Such as this one from Max, which you can see the change in the colour of the plume as we approach Miko here, from orange to blue, and then eventually shutdown of the 9 million engines on B1060 for the very last time.
Colors, again, absolutely gorgeous, as you mentioned. Shout out to all of our teams tracking there. And we should be having Miko momentarily. Again, our clocks are a little more real-time than the lag that we occasionally see from X, the Everything app. And it appears we have Miko, main engine cutoff. And we should see stage separation. There we go. B1060 separates one final time.
And that's it. Done its job. Heading for the Atlantic. And for a very split second there from the second stage view, I'm not sure if we'll get that back from SpaceX or not at the request of the customer, but we could see the sunset across the horizon of the Earth, which means this could be jellyfish hour. If you are along the eastern seaboard of North America, look up. If you have a spot in the clouds, a break in the clouds, you could see a beautiful jellyfish from the second stage. And if you do, put it on Twitter and tag us, or X and tag us, and we want to see pictures if you can get them.
Exactly, and we should be coming up on payload fairing separation. Again, as you mentioned, at the request of the customer, Issa, there will not be video of that, but we should expect the confirmation of that fairing separation. Now, man, that was, it seemed loud to us. Julia, how was that for you?
Well, I shared a picture in our back channel. I got a glowy, cloudy sky, but that was a loud one. The wind was blowing toward the mainland, so we all got a nice rumble, and I actually still am hearing the occasional faint rumble. Well, now that I have my noise-canceling headphones on, not so much, but that was fabulous, and according to Max, it was super loud where he was.
Yes, the word he used is punchy, and I think that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, punchy's good.
I mean, yeah, that's absolutely beautiful view there. Again, Das's favorite view, an empty launch pad. And Ryan, I know I normally like to come in with the fun facts, but you've got a fun fact for this mission?
I've got a fun fact. According to SpaceX, this was the 200th mission to use flight-proven fairings, which is, this is the only time this has ever been done. No one else does this. 200 missions. The fairing recovery is just the little. It's very underappreciated. That's the word I was looking for. Very underappreciated. And these are, it's $12 million. Other people just toss them into the ocean. SpaceX, they bring them back.
Yep. Galileo, will you let me go? Its hope is that Falcon 9 will let it go once it gets to orbit. Sorry, I had to.
And again, if you are on the eastern seaboard of North America, look outside if it isn't cloudy, or if you can see a break in the clouds, because you could see prime jellyfish hour at the corner of my eye. I've just seen a photo from D, who is in the Everglades, and it looks pretty cool. So if you are on the eastern seaboard of North America, look outside. You could see something pretty spectacular.
Right, because even though we don't have the cameras, the flight continues. That stage burns for about 8.5 minutes typically. It might be longer or shorter. SpaceX did not give exact information for this particular launch. And I believe we're working on getting those replays for you, too, of tonight's launch. In the meantime, I want to thank some support that we got during the launch itself. Steve saying the last two trips, I timed it just right for the static fire of Vulcan, and in January for the launch of Vulcan with the sonic boom from the X-38 coming home. Oh, the mini spy plane, the mini shuttle. That's pretty lucky to get a launch and that kind of landing as well, not just a Falcon booster landing. And John Depker saying, I saw my first launch as a kid from the back window of our van as we were heading back to Ohio at the crack of dawn. It happened to be a shuttle launch. It was the first time I really felt inspired. I mean, shuttle is what got me inspired too, so Thank you for the support. Thank you for sharing that story. And hopefully you join us for Shuttle Sundays on Space Coast Live, Sundays, 3 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about all of these different shuttle missions and the history behind them. And if you haven't already, the first 2 episodes are available on the YouTube channel. And this week, tomorrow, we'll be talking about STS-5 and 6, which is the first operational shuttle mission and the first flight of Challenger. John Devger also gifting 5 Red Team memberships, which thank you so much for the continued support, a name we see here quite often and appreciate it. And then FFC T-Hawk saying, fare thee well, B1060-20. It has indeed served us well. 20 flights, and unfortunately will end up in the ocean. But
And I believe I would be correct in saying, just very quickly, another little quick pimp, Challenger's first flight was from this very pad, from 39A. So a little bit of cross-promotion there. This pad right here, a few years ago, that's fair to say it was a few years ago, but from this very pad, this one right here, the one you're looking at, this one.
yeah, the first 24 space shuttle missions, all of the crew missions to the moon, all launched from here. So,
And now Galileo FM25 and 27, I think clearly the cherry on top of the cake for 39A.
oh, absolutely, prime mission for it. Now, this is also interesting from SpaceX. I do want to point out that they mentioned that they are working on qualifying the fleet of boosters and fairings to support 40 missions each. Julia, as a Space Coast resident here, what do you think? Do you think we'll see a 40 times reflown booster and 40 times reflown fairing soon?
I think we'll see the 40-time reflown fairing first. I think those are a little bit easier for them to kind of strip, refurbish, and fly again. Booster, well, it took us a hot minute to get to 20, but I honestly think we could make it to 40. We'll just have to see if they continue on nominal performance as they age. But it seems like they know the ins and outs of each booster. And how each individual booster basically gets ready for flight, and I think it's possible.
And as they point out in the tweet that you see on the screen there, or the post on X, adding that increasing Falcon's flight count provides valuable information on repeated reuse, a critical element for making life multiplanetary with Starship. So not only delivering customer payloads as well as Starlinks, but also using Falcon 9 as a testing ground for Starship, even more so than it's already been. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and something important I think to bring up is that SpaceX currently has, if you count everything, count all the boosters that are being refurbished, awaiting launch, in the hangar, completed testing at McGregor, they have approximately 20 Falcon 9 boosters in the fleet at the moment. There's no official numbers or anything, but that's just kind of what we've seen from watching things like McGregor Live. So if you assume 20-ish boosters, times that by 40 flights, that is 800 Falcon 9 missions with just the boosters they have today, not counting expendable boosters, not counting the numerous boosters they're going to build in the future for Falcon 9. That's 800 launches for Atlas, for Vulcan, for Ariane, for all these, for different expendable launch systems. They need to build 800 rockets. SpaceX can build 20 rockets and launch them 800 times. That's just insane. They literally have that many boosters right now. Right now.
That's, when you put it in that perspective, it's crazy. It just really goes to show how fast they are moving here. In fact, so fast, don't forget, there's another launch tomorrow as well. As we're working on pulling the replays from this mission tonight, SpaceX is already preparing for the next Starlink mission out of Slick 40 tomorrow evening. So, I mean, this is just non-stop cadence.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop tomorrow. It continues on Wednesday because we have Worldview Legion 1 and 2 from Vandenberg, and then another Starlink on Thursday from Slick 40, and then another Starlink from Vandenberg. Next week, it just doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop with SpaceX. They've launched 300-odd successful Falcon 9. I think this might be 301 now. Successful Falcon 9s. Sorry, that was the landed number from Twist last week. I'm getting confused. Anyway, it's more than 300 now. That 800 is more than double that number, and they can do that with just their current fleet. I mean, it's just these numbers are absolutely bonkers.
You might even say bonkies.
I'm not Jack. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that.
But yeah, as you mentioned, the previous Starlink launch, 6-53, marked the 300th booster landing. So tomorrow, hopefully, we will see 301, as that one is expected to be recovered on Just Read the Instructions downrange.
No 301 today, Ryan. No 301 today.
And talking about the jellyfish, Julie was mentioning that we could kind of see, we would hopefully see some of it. Ryan, you mentioned it, and there is Dee's view from the Florida Everglades of that jellyfish from the beautiful, right around sunset, Falcon 9 launch. Julia, how do we get these jellyfishes anyway, as we take a look at this replay?
Oh, how do we get those jellyfishes? Well, that sunlight from the sunset actually just kind of does a nice atmospheric trick with the plume of the rocket as it ascends into space, and that sunlight can be caught interacting with the plume. And I'm enjoying this replay because that's definitely not what I saw 12 miles away.
Beautiful views, and again, the sounds that Max was able to capture, phenomenal. The view here from the press site there. Let's get that close-up view. Oh, look at that. Again, no landing legs. Kind of hard to see it through the bright flames there, but it's weird seeing it without them. Also now, with the cladding removed, you can see the exhaust going through the fixed surface structure there, the tower that you see on the left. It's always kind of cool. It looks apocalyptic almost.
I am very quickly just scrolling through Twitter to see if there are any images of jellyfishes being posted anywhere. I haven't seen anything yet, but if I do, I will bring it to you.
I see people, Michael Davis in chat, saying they saw the jellyfish in North Carolina. Gary saw it as well, getting a bunch of people in chat saying that they did see it. And I believe this is Max's tracking camera with the beautiful sound. Just had to soak that in again.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sound. And I can confirm I found some pictures on Twitter and video even. So if Kevin can bring them up, that'd be great. I don't want a backseat direct, but that'd be great. So thank you, everyone. Keep them coming, because they look beautiful.
Well, first, let's see Fleet Cam turn Port Canaveral from night to day. As there's already a booster. You see there, you got boosters in port. And now boosters launching. So it's quite busy there. Look at that, just gorgeous, especially as it goes through the clouds. Sometimes the cloud launches are even cooler because it creates almost like that mushroom type cloud effect as it goes through them, just with less radiation. That doesn't get old. Through the cloud deck, and thank you everyone who's tweeting us or posting us all of those images and videos. Apparently a lot of people got a chance to see it, and so if you did, first off, awesome, congratulations, love it. And second off, hopefully you got to enjoy the view as we take another replay here from our tracking camera. I'm sure we can also expect the transporter erector very soon at the rate that SpaceX is going, or the Strongback, on the right side of your screen to start going upright again very soon. I mean, Julie, I know you didn't get to see this, but, it's still beautiful on the Space Coast.
Oh, definitely. And I can see our port cam actually had a gorgeous view, which is probably the view a lot of people that were on the immediate Space Coast saw. And you know what? Even though we can't really see the rocket, the way the clouds light up is still pretty.
Oh, absolutely. But for those who can see the rocket, like Max, taking this epic shot of Falcon 9 lifting off. Max, you done it again, my dude. Another great launch shot. I gotta say, I feel like we have one of the best teams in the business out there at the Cape, getting these amazing shots. So, shout out to Max.
Especially when you're outside in horrid weather, just waiting for the launch. Max has been out there for a while now, and having to set up literally at the last moment so nothing was damaged by the rain and whatnot. I wouldn't want to be stood out there. I'm lucky enough to be sat down in my comfortable chair in the indoors, nice and warm. Max is out there, doing the hard work. So we'll get some Max love into chat, everybody.
Through the heat, through the cold, through the mosquitoes, through the bugs, and the bugs.
The bugs
Did
are
I mention
horrible.
the bugs?
Yeah, they eat you alive, and I'm not exaggerating. They eat you alive.
Yeah, if you it's like the old bloodletting with the leeches. It's just that's your way to do that this day. Oh boy. Again, great job, Max. Reminder, you can always tag us on all of our socials with these cool images. I see Virginia Beach seeing it. Let's see, North Carolina seeing it. It's crazy how much it was seen up the coast. As beautiful as that launch was, as we say farewell to Booster 1060, I do want to thank the people who joined me for this broadcast. Ryan Caton, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome, Sawyer. Well, not nice to see a booster get thrown into the ocean, but very exciting to see another addition to the European Galileo satellite navigation constellation. That's something you can say 3 times fast.
And thank you as well for joining us from the field, Julia Bergeron.
It was a pleasure to join you all, and I look forward to us seeing you again very soon for yet another launch.
Yes, as soon as tomorrow. As crazy as that is, Starlink 6-54, the window opening there at 5:50 p.m. Eastern Time. Check this out. This is from Ty Carter of the launch, seen from coastal eastern North Carolina. When we talk about jellyfish, that is a jellyfish.
Big jelly hours. That is big jelly right there.
I am jelly of that view.
So thanks very much for tagging us on Twitter at NASA Spaceflight. You can also do it on Instagram and all the other socials, Facebook, TikTok, all the rest of them.
Oh, absolutely. We love to share them. Our social team is edging us along here to say, come on, we want more stuff for our social channels if you got it. So make sure, if you don't already, that you follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. I believe there's even a TikTok. So make sure you follow us on all the socials as well, because there's some awesome stuff that makes it there that you don't get to see that happened on air. Also want to give props as well, as we mentioned again, to Max Evans, who was out in the field operating the camera for this particular mission. Thank you for braving the conditions out there and the rain earlier to still get us that view. And one final thank you as well here to Kevin Michael Reed, who was in the back channel, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and bringing all of these views to your eyes, your screens, and into your homes or phones, wherever you may be watching. Once again, the next launch will be back for tomorrow night. Starlink 6-54. The window opens 5:50 p.m. Eastern. That is launching from Slick 40. Hopefully, we will see you guys for that particular launch. As we go through the names of all the people that helped make this stream possible, I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I have been your host for this evening. And in the words of Das, as he also likes to say, later, nerds. We'll see you next time.
And here we go.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, with planet.
Tango down to nominal.
Flight constellation ST off. Say again, ST off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed. We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?